Alright, so today we're going to be talking about Ayaka, our second half patch for the 3.5 banner, and her rerun is going to be coming out very soon. Now I do have a video talking about Ayaka and her kids. Is she worth it? Is she still standing in the upcurrent meta? That is a video that I posted beforehand. You can see it in the corner somewhere if you want to look at that, if you're going to be summoning for Ayaka. But for a lot of people, is it going to be her rerun back, and they're going to be summoning for either the weapon or constellations or maybe both. So we're going to be talking about that today. But before we get into that, make sure to leave a like and a sub on the video. If you're enjoying the Genshin content, I'm going to be covering Miko when he comes out, same with Baiju and Kave, so I'm really excited for that. And also, of course, if you leave a sub or a like, maybe that saves a weapon from being level 80, you know. But let's go ahead and talk about Ayaka and her constellations and weapon. Which is more worth? If none of them are worth, which one should you summon for? All that type of stuff. So let's get into it. So Ayaka's signature weapon is the Mistsplitters Reforged. We're going to start off with this because of course this is the easier of the two to explain. The Mistsplitters Reforged is a very good weapon, with it being as universal as it can be, doing a lot of big stat stick things, and the passive is really nice as well. The Mistsplitters Reforged rocks a base attack of 674 and a crit damage of 44%. The passive for this weapon is gain a 12% elemental damage bonus for all elements and receive the might of the Mistsplitters emblem. So this is an overall universal buff that's going to be able to be put on any character. At stack levels 1, 2, and 3, you will be getting 8%, 60%, or 28% elemental damage bonus for the character's elemental type. So depending on what character you put this on, this is going to be universally good for any character, getting that extra elemental damage bonus that matches with their character. So if you put it on Jean, she can get an Animo bonus. If you put it on Bennett, Pyro bonus, Ayaka, Cryo bonus, you know, that type of stuff. You get these stacks from doing a certain amount of actions, and these actions are as follows: doing a normal attack that deals elemental damage, so you may be like C6 Bennett or Ayaka self-infusion because this is Ayaka's signature weapon, casting elemental burst, or when your energy is less than 100%. So all of these durations have different stack timers, and also when you get these stacks and you do all of these things, which you can possibly do those all in a combo, you will get the full passive of Mistsplitters Reforged. Now the Mistsplitter, like I said, is a very valuable weapon. This is going to be rerunning with the Calamity Queller, so this is something to make note of, because you know the Calamity Queller is Shenhe's signature and is going to share a banner with the Mistsplitters Reforged. Now the 4-star weapons, I don't know, but for the most part when people summon on the weapon banner is for the 5-star weapon. So thinking about the banner itself first, because that is a big aspect of, you know, should you summon, because you know the value you get from losing the 50-50 or winning is a very big gap. The Mistsplitters Reforged is an amazing weapon, universal, can be put on any sword user, boosts up their crit damage like crazy, and gives them a bunch of elemental damage bonus. So this is an overall perfect good sword, and it's going to be a minute before another sword comes up like this as universally able to be used and can be put on anybody. But the Calamity Queller by itself, if you don't have Shenhe, if you do have Shenhe, then maybe the weapon banner is worth summoning on to get the Mistsplitters Reforged, because it is a big universal bump in, you know, your account. What characters can use this? You can put on this on any character. So this is a really good sword. But if you don't have Shenhe, or you don't intend on getting Shenhe, that weapon banner might be very detrimental, just because not only do you have a chance of losing the 50-50, of course, getting an off-rate banner weapon, which of course I don't wish that on anybody. I hope everyone wins their 50-50s. But the Calamity Queller by itself is a very un-universal weapon, is a very subjective and a very constrained weapon for Shenhe basically only. It does have some buffs to give other characters, and it does sport a super duper high base attack, but it has an attack percentage main stat. It only gives that small elemental damage bonus, with it only using a passive that has to have the character off field to help him get attack bonus. It's just not a really good weapon universally. Is pretty much subjected to only Shenhe, although you can use it on other characters, not really a universal weapon. So the weapon banner's value right now isn't very high, because the Calamity Queller is just for Shenhe, and for people that don't have Shenhe already and don't intend on getting her, you have a chance of getting that polearm, and then you're stuck with a polearm that is not as crazy good as the other ones in the game, like Staff of Homa, Engulfing Lightning. Those staffs are a lot more universal, a lot better for a lot of different characters, while the Calamity Queller really isn't so. So that is a big, you know, bump in the road for the weapon banner itself. We will get back to if this is worth or not when I go back to, you know, the overall summary of this. But let's go ahead and talk about Ayaka's constellations. Now Ayaka does have some of the strongest constellations in the game, because a lot of these are not wasted constellations. You know how like Zhao has the defense buff, how Albedo has that other buff, I forgot exactly what it was. But it's another, you know, some characters have useless constellations that don't really help their kit that much, or at a certain point you're getting diminishing returns on going higher in your constellations. But Ayaka is a different case because all of these constellations are really good. So let's go ahead and talk about C1. So C1 basically is when you're doing normal or charge attacks, your skill cooldown is going to be lowering itself by a bit, by 0.3 seconds every 0.1 second. So every time you do normal charge attack, you're going to be getting a chance to reduce this cooldown, which is going to help a lot. It's going to help her ER issues, get your burst up a little bit faster. And since that skill hits pretty hard, you are going to be getting a big bump in DPS with having this constellation. But of course, if you're looking to get C1 by itself, not really recommended, just because it's not going to help you that much extra. It is going to help with ER problems or to get your burst up faster, but overall primogem to value, C1 isn't as crazy as, you know, these other ones that I'm about to talk about. Now, what does go crazy is C2. Now, C2 does add these 2 extra swirls to your burst, so if it's a big enough enemy, you will be hitting them for multiple instances a lot more than if you had, you know, C0. This does bring a pretty good damage increase with these because they have their own swirls, their own damage. They do reduce damage because it is 20% of the original ult damage. So it is going to do a little bit less, but it will add on because there's so many instances of damage while that's going on. Now, the really good thing about C2 is if you're going for C2, this is a big damage increase. And then when you have C2, you also have C1. So this helps with energy recharge. So getting C1, trying to get to C2 is a really good thing. This is going to help a lot. It's going to help Ayaka become basically a shredder, and it's overall a really good stopping point for Ayaka to stop at C2. Now, if you want to go further, then this is where she starts going insane. C3 is going to help her burst come, you know, 3 levels up for the talents. C4 is a big one because C4 is going to decrease the defense of enemies when they get hit by the burst. So this is going to decrease defense by 30%, and with Ayaka's high damage, this is going to basically evaporate their health bar like no tomorrow. After C5, this is her skill, you know, you get the +3. And then C6 is where she basically says, you know, move the burst aside, I can do this by myself. So Ayaka gets this buff every 10 seconds, which basically is going to make her charge attack damage go up by 298%. This is going to be absolutely nasty, and you get this taken off of you once you charge attack, and then the timer is going to restart, giving you, that 10-second cooldown before you get the next charge attack. Now, basically putting this together with characters like Kazuha, Shenhe, Bennett, all of these different characters, and then you charge attack, you're going to be basically deleting bosses with just your charge attack, and the numbers you get from this are so satisfying. Now, sadly, I'm not going to be able to grab this constellation. This is a little too much money for me to be spending for Genshin to get to C6, but this is a very satisfying constellation overall. I'm a little overkill for a lot of the things that are in this game, so it's not really worth it for C6. But of course, it's your account, your primogems. If you want to C6 Ayaka, you're going to be having so much fun because there's nothing in basically this game that's going to stop you from, getting to that point. But talking about her most valued constellations, we're going to be saying it's going to be C2, C4, C6. Now, in terms of value to primogem, if you really want to, C2 is a really good stopping point. I think C4 is the start of, overkill being a little bit way too broken because, defense minus by 30%, and you already have the 2 extra swirls and you get your burst back faster. That's a bit overkill for this game. And then C6 is basically the king of overkill. You're going to be basically deleting bosses with just a charge attack. So yeah, C2 is a really good stopping point if you want constellations. If you're not looking for constellations, if you're trying to get C1, although, like I said, it's your account, you do what you want to do, your primogems, C1 isn't as valuable when it's by itself. Because yes, it helps with their energy recharge, but you're going to have so many particles coming from different characters like Shenhe, Kazuha, and other cryo batteries that you really don't need it for Ayaka. She'll end up getting it very quick anyway, and she has really good damage without her burst regardless. So, not really needed the C1. So if you were, thinking about going for C1, I kind of advise against it just because it's a little bit not needed because her energy recharge problems aren't as big when you build her, correctly. But if you want to go for C1, go ahead. C2 I think is a really good stopping point for Ayaka if you want a super high investment Ayaka. C4 overkill, C6 overkill. So yes, so Ayaka has really good constellations. Nonetheless, for anyone going for those constellations, hopefully you win your 50-50. But now to talk about which one is better, the weapon or the constellations. Because the weapon has a really weird weapon banner, because it is going to be paired up with the Calamity Queller, I can't recommend 100% to go for it, just because the Calamity Queller is on that banner. And for people that don't have Shenhe, people that don't aren't thinking of getting Shenhe in the future, there's going to be a really hard banner, because once you get that polearm, it's not going to be able to be used on a lot of different characters. You can use it, but overall not the best thing in the world to have. If it was with another banner or another banner weapon, then I would say yes, 100% go for the Mistsplitters. But this is really up to your primogem count, what you think. If you don't mind getting the Calamity Queller, then I would say go for the weapon over Constellations, because the weapon's so universal and so good. You should go for it. But since the Calamity Queller is on the banner, I am going to say it's a pretty good skip unless you plan to go full pity. This is the only way I can recommend this weapon banner, is if you're willing to go full pity, have full pity for the Mistsplitters. I would say go ahead, go for it. You're doing a good job getting this weapon because it can go on anybody. You can use this until Genshin ends, basically. It's such a good sword. So if you got full pity primogems, go for the weapon. It's really, really good, worth it 100%. But when it comes to her constellations over her weapon, I would kind of say C2 would be more worth if you're wanting to invest in a hyper carry Ayaka, or not hyper carry Ayaka, but if you're planning to use Ayaka for the long run. You know, basically you like your character, you want to use her character. Character's very fun. This is something I explained in my other video. Very seamless character. C2 is a very good stopping point for a lot of people, and this is basically almost be the same amount of primogem spent to get the Mistsplitter. So Mistsplitter overall more universal, but the weapon banner is holding it back because of the Calamity Queller, not the best thing in the world to have. So if you're going to be going full pity, go for the Mistsplitters Reforged, because you will end up getting this weapon. It will be 100% worth it. The Calamity Queller, maybe you have Shenhe. Hopefully you have Shenhe. If you're planning on somebody for Shenhe in the future, then you'll have Calamity Queller already. Hopefully y'all just get the Mistsplitters Reforged super early. So there's that. And if you want to invest in a less risky banner or a less risky state, then you go ahead and go for a C2, because yeah, that junk is crazy. It does a lot of extra damage, and the C1 helps with the ER issues like crazy, so you can prioritize more crit damage and more attack percentage than ER. She'll basically be getting her all off cooldown every single time because of the C1, because there's so many things helping Ayaka get her burst up. So in the grand scheme of things, which one is worth? Full pity primogems for weapon banner, then the Mistsplitter 100%. If you want to be less risky and you're gonna think you're gonna use Ayaka for the long run, then C2 would be better than the Mistsplitter in this case, just because Ayaka has a lot more weapons in her arsenal that she can use, like the Amenoma, Kageuchi, the what is it called? A lot of the attack percentage weapons that she has in the game, crit damage weapons from the Star Glitter shop. There's a little bit extra things that you can use besides the Mistsplitters Reforged. So hopefully this helps y'all figure out what y'all want, because both situations are pretty risky. This is going to cost a bit to get C2, but is a really good stopping point because you get ER buffs and you're going to be getting more damage having both of those constellations. And then for the Mistsplitters Reforged, the weapon banner is a little risky because the Calamity Queller is holding it back from being a crazy banner. And the chance of you getting it. If it was another weapon on this banner, then I would probably be saying yes, this banner is going to be amazing. Something for the Mistsplitter 100%, but because that polearm is on the banner, I can't really say 100% to summon for this weapon. But of course, at the end of the day, your primos, your account, you do what you want to do. I hope everyone wins their 50/50s, wins their 5-star summons early. But other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching up to the end. See y'all in the next one, and peace.